Hey guys, welcome back to Ashar Books. Today I'm here for another Top 5 Wednesday. Top 5 Wednesday was created by Lainey over at gingerreadslainey, and it's now moderated by Sam at Thoughts on Tomes. Today's topic is books from before you were either like on Booktube or vlogging or on like Instagram or anything from before you were kind of talking about books. So since I just started this channel pretty recently, pretty much all the books I've read are from before. But I did pick out 5 that were kind of my favorites or that I really would like to recommend, and I hope you guys like it. The first one I picked is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. This is a series, and it's weird, I've all of a sudden been hearing a lot more about this series. Again, I think there's kind of another 2 that came out in this series, which I actually haven't read yet. But the original trilogy is 3 books, and this book is kind of a fantasy. I'd say it's a fantasy, and it's about a girl named, is it Yelena? Yeah, Yelena, who is about to be executed. So she's in prison. You'll find out kind of why later. And they give her this chance that if she, rather than being executed, she could become the poison taster for the commander of this big, basically the commander is kind of like the ruler of this area. So she does, and the story just kind of unfolds from there. There's a guy named Valak who, it does become a love interest, but it's a very slow burn romance, and there's so much more to the story than the romance. I really enjoyed this series, and I think it's just really different than a lot of other fantasies out there. And it's a little bit of an older series, so I feel like there's not as much talk about it, but I highly recommend you guys looking this one up if you're interested. The next book that I would like to talk about is Bully by Penelope Douglas. So this one is, I'd say it's like a new adult romance. It's set in high school, but I definitely think it's more of like a new adult, like content wise. So this story follows Jared and Tate, and Jared and Tate were really good friends when they were younger from childhood. And I think they live next door to each other, so they're kind of like childhood, not sweethearts because they weren't dating, but they were very close. Then something happens one summer when they're about 13 to Jared, and all of a sudden he kind of drops Tate. He doesn't tell her why, he doesn't tell her what's going on, he just isn't her friend anymore, and he starts treating her really terrible at school and starts being a complete jerk, like doing pranks on her and just really cruel stuff to her for a couple of years. So Tate gets tired of it, and she takes an opportunity to go on a trip, like a study abroad in Europe for a year, and then she comes back and things kind of start rolling from there, and you kind of find out, you know, what happened, you know, feelings kind of develop from there, and you kind of find out what's going on. It's almost like a bit of a mystery too, because it's kind of out of the blue. So the story really just follows Jared and Tate's relationship and kind of how they come together and how they kind of get over all of these old wounds, and I really enjoyed it. There's Bully, and then there's also another second one, but it's just in Jared's point of view, because this one isn't Tate's. Tate is the girl, Tate's perspective, and I love Penelope Douglas. I love all of her books, and this one is no different. The characters are just fantastic. So if you're looking for like a new adult that has a lot of like tension, definitely go for this one. Another new adult book that I'd like to kind of talk about is Sweet Home by Tilly Cole. I love anything Tilly Cole writes. She also has another series called The Hades Hangman, and it's about like a motorcycle group, as well as other books. But this one, I absolutely love this series. This one is it's a sports romance, but I just think there's so much more to than that. I've read this one a couple times. It just kind of stuck with me more than a lot of the other kind of more fluffier romances did. So this one is about a girl who moves here from Europe, from England, and she comes here for college, and she's going to, I think it's the University of Alabama, I think. I'm not sure, don't quote me on what school it is, but she moves to the States to go to school. And she has kind of a troubled past, and she had a really hard childhood, so she just kind of keeps running from her problems, and she ends up here. And she meets Rome, who is the quarterback of the football team, kind of like the god. I mean, in Alabama, football is, everything. So he is kind of rules the school, but he has a really kind of troubled home life as well. His family is one of those families that looks picture perfect from the outside, but when you see it from the inside, it's kind of crumbling, and there's just a lot of terrible things going on behind the closed doors. So these two characters meet, and they are just the cutest couple ever. Like, that's the only way I can describe them. But Rome is just, I mean, it definitely takes a little bit for them to kind of figure out their relationship. They both kind of were like, they're just very different characters, and I think they both never would have gone for each other in other circumstances, but you know, they met and they just kind of had this instant like chemistry, and they went from there. So I love this. If you want a new adult that has a lot of heart and a lot of just really sweet moments, but also some tough moments to read, definitely check out this book, or honestly anything by Tilly Cole. The next one I have to talk about is Bloodlines by Rochelle Mead. I did mention this one in my last kind of video, which was about the game, the rewrite, reread, or burn, but I wanted to talk about it a little more in depth. This one is the spin-off series from Vampire Academy, but I like this series so much better. I think a lot of people are put off from it because they're not interested in Vampire Academy, which I understand. I mean, that's a lot of commitment, and so is this. This one is 5 books, but I recommend giving it a chance. It's about Sydney, who is a side character, a pretty minor side character in the Vampire Academy series, and it has Adrian, who is another side character in it as well. And this one I just feel like is way less of a typical cliche kind of like vampire novel than Vampire Academy. Even though I did like Vampire Academy at the time, I think this series, to me, is just better. Sydney is a very like feisty, she's smart, she's very driven, she's very like by the book when the story starts, and you kind of just see her grow throughout the series. And then Adrian is the bad boy, but he's a heart of gold. I know it's very cliche, but these two characters really do just grow so much throughout this series, and I just really enjoy it, so definitely give this one a chance. And the last one I want to talk about is EdenBrooke by Julian Donaldson. This is a historical romance about a girl named Marianne. And she kind of is just kind of your typical story of she feels kind of tied down, she doesn't really want to get married right now, so she's just kind of looking for something to do when her sister invites her to this like lavish country estate that she's been invited to. And supposedly her sister is trying to get the kind of owner of this lavish estate to fall in love with her. So Marianne figures she'll just go kind of hang out, be free without being, you know, pushed to do things she doesn't want to do, and her sister can have the love and romance, you know, for herself. Obviously, it's a romance novel. Things don't quite go the way Marianne thinks, and it just kind of goes from there. There's some twists and turns about, you know, who should be with who, but there's not a love triangle that I remember. I'm pretty sure there's not. I really, really enjoyed this. It's a very sweet historical romance. If you like kind of like anything set in that like Victorian Jane Austen era, definitely check this one out. The characters were just very sweet, very relatable. Even though it was historical, I thought they were very relatable for today. And I just remember loving this book when I read it, like flying through it and then forcing other people to read it. I also will say this one is a pretty like PG historical romance, so if you're not into the steamier scenes that are in a lot of other historical romances, definitely check out this book because it doesn't have any of that, but it still has a really, really beautiful love story to it. Okay guys, that is it for my top 5 Wednesday this week. Let me know some of your favorite books from before you started Booktube or blogging or whatever, things like that. Subscribe and like if you would like to, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.